On behalf of the Innovation Entrepreneurship Initiative, I'd like to welcome you not only to tonight's panel, but to Entrepreneurship Week at Duke. It's an incredible array of events we've got going for you this week. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Innovation Entrepreneurship Initiative, let me just kind of share with you a little bit about our mission so you can get a sense of the deep commitment that we have to applying innovation and entrepreneurship to addressing the world's most critical problems. So we really seek to bring life and to deepen Duke's enduring commitment of knowledge in the service of society. And one way I think you can see the Innovation Entrepreneurship Initiative at its core really is helping the university take ideas and moving them into action. So we really seek to help make Duke an agent of transformation through an entrepreneurial spirit, generating innovations from the ideas that grow at the university and translating those innovations to positively impact individuals, communities, institutions, and societies. And we seek to inspire and prepare all members of the Duke community for innovative leadership and to actively support and encourage the translation of knowledge in the service of society. Now, one of my hats at Duke is serving as the managing director for the Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship pillar of the INE initiative. And really, from our perspective, we really want to ensure that Duke is widely recognized as the global leader in developing innovative, sustainable solutions to address the world's most critical problems. So we really think of our mission within the INE pillar as really helping to create transformative learning environments to inspire, prepare, and support entrepreneurial leaders and scholars to address these critical needs in areas of health, energy, education, poverty, and so many other areas along those lines. And so I'm particularly excited that we get to kick off Duke Entrepreneurship Week with a social innovation and entrepreneurship themed pillar. If you haven't had a chance on the outside there to pick up some handouts of the other things going on this week, there's just an incredible array. We have an amazing global health social entrepreneur from the Social Entrepreneurship Accelerator, Duke, speaking tomorrow night. There's information sessions on the new undergraduate certificate in innovation and entrepreneurship. The Venture for America is going to be represented, helping students think about how to be a rock star startup employee, or maybe spending a year after you graduate working in small businesses around the country. There's an incredible lineup of faculty on Wednesday. Thursday night is Matt Christensen's going to speak, and it's going to be followed by a student activities fair over at Gross Hall. And I think kind of the crowning achievement of the week, on Friday we'll have the grand finales of the Duke Startup Challenge with a lot of different tracks. So an incredible array of activities. Please take time to learn about that. And then also share, if you Google it tonight or go home tonight and take a peek at it, Duke News, the Office of News and Communications, is doing also an amazing series of stories. They say it's the biggest project they've undertaken ever at Duke to package up a variety of themes and stories. In this case, it's around innovation and entrepreneurship. So whether it's some great photos from the work we did starting a new Duke Engage program around social entrepreneurship in Detroit, or one of our MBAs who did some incredible work in East Africa this summer with a seed social entrepreneur, and so many other stories and videos. Really encourage you to take a look at that. You can go to Just Duke Today and find that, or look on our website. So let's go ahead and get into the panel. I think we're really in for a real treat tonight. What a better way to kick off Entrepreneurship Week than having three outstanding and young alumni who are really pursuing innovative approaches to addressing critical social needs. I mean, they're working on economic development through means of education, through sustainable green jobs, through sustainable diamond mining and jewelry. And I think they each share a commitment to having innovative approaches and actually drawing upon entrepreneurship as well. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing intros because I think it's best for them to introduce themselves. But you have from my left to my far left, and from your left to your right, Donnell Baird here is Trinity 03. He's the founder of Block Power. He's an Echoing Green Fellow. I appreciate Donnell came in a little early to talk in my social innovation class this afternoon, and the students had a great time, so I know you're in for a treat. Next to Donnell is Rachel Lichty, who is a graduate of Fuqua, class of 14, the founder of the Clarity Project. I had the great pleasure of working with Rachel while she was a student, and she was a Seed Prize winner from the CASE, the Center for the Advancement of Social Entrepreneurship, where she worked on her venture as well. And Daniel Kimberg, Dan is class of 07 from Trinity. He's the founder of Student U, actually started developing his idea right here in Tony Brown's class here at Sanford. And so I think these are three amazing social entrepreneurs. Please join me in welcoming our panel this evening. So our format's going to be this. I'm going to ask a few introductory questions just to get the conversation moving. I've asked each panelist that we'll try and keep our responses brief. I've encouraged some crosstalk among the panel. But after about 2 or 3 questions, I'm going to really encourage you to come into the discussion. It's nothing better than the interaction we have. But essentially, I'll ask them one at a time to first introduce their organization, their venture. Then I'll ask them a follow-up question that really helps them share about how did they come up with this idea? What was their moment of inspiration or moment of obligation that helped them to identify this idea? And then I'll probably ask a follow-up question on some lessons learned, some challenges along the way, and then we'll just go ahead and open it up. So, Danelle, if you don't mind, I'll just start right with you. Can you introduce what is Block Power?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's exciting to be back in Sanford. Very cool building, very cool community. So Block Power is an early stage clean energy startup based in New York City, where I grew up and where I was a community organizer. We aggregate micro portfolios of clean energy projects in inner city neighborhoods, financially underserved communities. We send in engineers to do assessments of churches and synagogues, nonprofits, private schools, multifamily buildings. And we get a sense of the energy savings potential that solar or energy efficiency or smart technology can bring to those set of properties. Then we perform a financial analysis of each building. And we form the buildings into micro portfolios, which we sell on an online marketplace that we're building to investors who are interested in social, environmental, and financial returns. One of the things that we're interested in doing is connecting capital, particularly impact investment capital that's interested in a social or environmental return, as well as financial returns, to financially underserved communities that need it. And what we find is that it's easier to do so if we form a portfolio of properties that raises the transactional cost of the deal to a level that's interesting to investors. And that mitigates and spreads out the risk of default in kind of a high-risk investment. So for a quick example to end, one of the first blocks we formed was 6 inner-city Catholic schools in New York City in the South Bronx, which is one of the poorest neighborhoods in America, in East Harlem. We sent in engineers, we performed a financial analysis. It turned out that each building could save over $250,000 per year if they utilize solar and energy efficiency technology. It cost $1.2 million up front for all 6 buildings to go solar, to use smart thermostats and clean energy, which they didn't have. And so what we were able to do is to connect with wealthy philanthropists, a bunch of Wall Street guys who are passionate about inner city education and kind of believe that the metrics on Catholic education, for whatever reason, graduation rates, college retention rates are actually extraordinary for Catholic schools when compared to private schools, other charter schools, even high-performing ones like KIPP, and public schools. Because of this passion, they decided to make a philanthropic investment in these Catholic schools and are paying for the upfront costs of the solar and energy efficiency retrofits. Out of the money that's saved on each building's energy bill, they repay us for the cost of installing the solar. Last, we look to employ local low-income individuals. So in this case, 3 public housing residents in New York City, Denzel, Mercedes, and Wesley, who are trained to the highest level of third-party certification, passed their training courses over 6 months with flying colors. We employ them to participate in the retrofit because they grew up in that community. And it's really cool that the money they earned from working with us, they were able to use to pay tuition and pay for books in their 4-year programs. So I think that's Block Power. Yeah. And if there's questions, you can follow up.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana. Rachel, can you tell us a little bit about what the Clarity Project is?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. It's really nice to be here. That's amazing. Very cool. So Clarity Project. Clarity Project is an ethical jewelry company that's in business to support development in diamond mining. An ethical diamond company in business to support development in diamond mining communities. So we've done that by sourcing fair diamonds, gems, and metals to make and sell jewelry. So ready-to-wear jewelry like engagement rings, any other sort of fine jewelry. And then we invest our profits back into diamond mining communities to support adult literacy and primary education. And one of the biggest things we've done really is try to actually improve the operations of diamond mining itself. So oftentimes if people think about diamond mining at all, people might think about these really, really big mines. So a lot of people have heard of De Beers, these really big mines. But actually 20% of the world's diamonds come from small mines. They're called artisanal mines. They might be something even about the size of this room, and they're dug by guys with a shovel and a sieve, and they're going out day after day trying to find diamonds. And it provides, this is the livelihood for many of these individuals in diamond mining regions, because there are very few other livelihood opportunities. Most of these miners are illiterate. A lot of them haven't been educated at all, and have very few other opportunities. So when we looked at how might we help to improve diamond mining, and how might we be able to deliver a product that can appeal to consumers here in the US and conscious consumers around the world, we actually wanted to lean directly into this challenge of issues at the mine level, and from health and safety to environmental issues. So most recently, in December, we actually started a diamond mine, and we were able to work with a third-party organization and exceed 10 different standards for social and environmental performance. Anyway, we can talk more about that later, but in doing that, develop a supply chain that we can then use for jewelry to sell here in the States and internationally, actually.
That's very cool.
Thank you. Dan, what is Student U?
Great. First, do me a favor. Can you stand up if you're the first in your family to go to college, or if a roommate or one of your closest friends is the first in his or her family to go to college? Just stand up. Okay. Cool. I appreciate that. Thank you. So I believe that all people have the ability to succeed. All people have the ability to overcome whatever barriers, whatever obstacles, whatever zip code that person might have been born into, whatever isms or other challenges might face someone, in order to be able to stand and be the first in his or her family to go to college. I also know that right now we're living in a community where that's not happening. At Student U, we work with 390 students. Out of those 390 students, statistics tell us that only 14 are supposed to graduate from college. 14 out of 390, yet I really believe that all students, all people, have the ability to succeed. So it was about 8-9 years ago, I was in a room just right across the hall, and I started talking with other members of the Durham community about this idea. What if we could actually prove that all students could succeed? How powerful would that be? 8 years later, we've grown in many ways, some that I think are more important than others. We've grown because now we're working with 390 families. We've grown because of the comprehensive services we provide. So we see students every day during the summer, every day after school. We have social workers on staff. We work with physicians. We ensure all students have glasses. We ensure all students have a place to live. We try to think about all the comprehensive issues that can get in the way of a student succeeding, and we try to combat those issues. More important than that growth, though, I think, is the growth of the individual students that we've seen, that we've worked with since when they were in 5th grade. I'm going to tell you 2 stories. It was last Tuesday. We had one of our students who I met when he was in 5th grade. He's now a college freshman at UNC. Our oldest class are students in college standing up like some of you just did, if anyone was brave enough to ask that question in front of them. He was actually sitting in a freshman class that was all about entrepreneurship. It was an intro to entrepreneurship. Sitting next to him was one of our former teachers who said, "Oh, it's so cool that you're in this class. Are you thinking about Student U?" And Daniel said, "Yeah, I think about Student U every day." It's really amazing to think about him. I knew him when he was in 5th grade, a freshman at UNC, thinking about innovation and entrepreneurship. Second story, we have a budget of almost $2 million. We have 12 full-time employees. Our last full-time employee that we hired is one of our oldest students, a student who I, again, met in 5th grade, who now graduated from high school, is a freshman at NC Central and working with Student U full-time. I really believe that we're living in a community in Durham with the resources that are necessary to one day ensure that all students can succeed, and Student U is trying to be a part of a large community effort to make sure that happens.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks so much. Each of you are doing such exciting, incredible work. I wonder if there was a moment of obligation or a moment of inspiration or a moment at which you said, you recognized there was an opportunity there and you had to take some action on it. And Rachel, I don't know if you would mind starting with yourself. I mean, how is it that a student suddenly becomes interested in diamond mining on the other side of the world? And this was even before you were a student here.
Yes. So actually got involved or started this with two friends before I came to Duke, and ended up coming back to school. Coming back to school to pursue it further. So it actually started from my let's see here. How far back do I go? No, just kidding. So I had a background in community development and was working at a branding and marketing shop. Really, I was working with companies that were mission-driven, that were really pulling that consumer lever to make a difference around the world to support causes. And this is something that I had been passionate about and been working on for a while. And I was there in San Francisco, was 25, and it was about the time that my friends started getting engaged. And all of a sudden, the ring comes up, and as someone who had been doing community development and had been working in impoverished communities, that someone would buy a diamond ring just seemed ridiculous to me. Like, oh, it's so expensive, and oh my goodness, the negative impact that it's having on the ground, and that didn't go over well. And as I started to learn more, because I found myself sort of in tension with this idea, I actually found that I came to a total 180 and actually found that if this was an issue that I cared so much about, that in diamond mining communities, like a lot of natural resource-based economies, there's very little diversity in the economy, and a lot of people there don't have other options. So were we to take out that economic option, there's really nothing for them. So it was a matter of learning more and actually figuring out that, wow, instead of avoiding it altogether, how might we lean into this issue directly and instead just use the process to actually drive development in these communities and maybe in the meantime help impact an industry as well. And I would say there wasn't one big aha. I think that I had been totally wrong about something and now was on the exact flip side for me. That was something that was like, wow, all right, I really need to explore this more. But actually figuring out how we were going to do that was a lot of small steps. I spent a lot of time in Sierra Leone, and they actually have a phrase, small, small. It's just one step at a time. And that was something that we learned early on, small, small. And that is how we continued on and continues to drive us. So,
thanks, Rachel. Dan, you mentioned being in a classroom close by. As a matter of fact, meeting with community leaders. What led to that? What led you to even begin thinking about this whole opportunity for Student U?
Well, I just love Rachel's answer. That was great. Small, small. I love it. I think talking about moments is interesting. I think movements are created by a ton of moments, small moments that are strung together. And I like to think of Student U trying to be more of a movement than just one great moment. I spent 2 years just listening and learning, engaging in the Durham Public Schools, not only just tutoring, but asking questions and just being with students and being with parents and being with teachers and being with school board members and just trying to understand this community, which was my home because I was a Duke student and Duke is inside Durham. And so I wanted to just understand the community. So I had about 2 years of just listening and learning and awkwardly walking into as many school buildings as I could, trying to understand what was happening. And all of those little tiny conversations I had with those students and those parents and those school board members and those teachers, that all led to one class where I got to get excited about how do I take all the great things that are happening in Durham and how do I take the opportunity that I think still existed and try to put that together into a program.
I appreciate your comment on movement building. Donnell, you're an Echoing Green Fellow. For those who aren't familiar with Echoing Green, this is an organization that's been around for almost 25 years now or so, really looking around the world for young social entrepreneurs and supporting them. And I think these days, I've been a judge in the past, sometimes as many as 2,000 or more will apply, and only about 15 a year will be selected. You've been selected. They strongly believe in this concept of movement building, and I know you've been a community organizer. What has led you to identifying this particular need and taking action on it?
Yeah, I think I grew up in a financially underserved community, and my family was there, my cousins are there. Even though I was privileged to get a really great education, I was aware that it was a privilege. In going to prep school, attending Duke, and so what made me decide to do something about it is actually here on campus. I was taking an intro to African American Studies, and unfortunately there was a shooting in New York City. Where a Haitian immigrant was, shot 44 times by the NYPD. The police were exonerated because they were able to prove that they were afraid of him. He had an ID card in his hand, and they said that they thought it was a weapon, and so that was that. They were released. So in my class the next day, my professor Juanima Lubiano, who I think is still here, which is awesome, at Duke, explained to us what probable cause was, and I found the whole thing terribly, terribly depressing, just really, really sad. But for me, it also meant that maybe it wasn't going to be quite enough to become a corporate lawyer and just kind of move on with my life. That the challenges that inner cities face, which I experienced firsthand growing up, and my family experienced, were something that I specifically needed to try and solve. And I think it was said well that what began here at Duke was a search for the next 8 to 10 years around the sorts of solutions that would solve the problems that I was concerned about. On movement building more broadly, I think that Echoing Green sees itself as a facilitator of our generation as millennials, you guys coming of age. I guess I'm not technically a millennial, I'm a Gen Xer or something like that. Napster just came out when I was in college. You don't even know what Napster is. Echoing Green sees itself as a facilitator of millennials' total emphasis on creating jobs and purchasing products that have meaning, that have social and environmental impact. And so all of the psychographic data that companies and politicians collect on you guys say that you have much more of a passion for products and for jobs that have meaning to you.
We have been so focused on the students that we work with every day. We resist the idea of scaling beyond what we believe we're able to do. We have 390 students who all deserve the opportunity to one day be in your seats and be at a panel like this, and who are facing so many challenges beyond my comprehension. And what we want to do as an organization is we want to make sure those 390 students can thrive. Not just survive, but thrive. And that's the work that I do, and that's the work we want to do. There's a lot of pressure from an external world, and that pressure can take the form of checks that people are trying to hand to us. It could take the form of just 20 communities in the country that have approached us asking us to take Student U and what we do to other places. That pressure can be really hard to handle. And so it's a real big challenge to think about how do we take something that it's working well. Student U is working well. We can prove that what we're doing is good. How do we ensure that all of our students truly are thriving? How do we resist some of the temptations that exist to scale quicker than we want to? And how do we have the largest possible impact that we can have on the Durham community, a community that has built Student U?
It's fascinating, Dan. I think the challenges of scale are one of the biggest issues facing the field of social entrepreneurship and social innovation. I think many of us recognize there are huge problems out there, and society hasn't really found the solutions to address problems at scale yet. In our communities, there are innovations such as yours that really need the ability to go deeper and have even greater impact with the current population. And many of you might know Triangle Residential Options for Substance Abusers locally here at Trosa. They've struggled with the same thing, going deep and versus scaling out. Danelle, can we turn to you? Is there a challenge, a lesson learned, something along the way that was important to you?
There are so many challenges. I think that instead of pointing to a specific example, what may be useful for you guys is to just talk about the constant failure, just over day after day, month after month, year after year of just failure. And what I think the lesson that comes from that is that failure is itself a lesson, right? That if you think about your entrepreneurship in a methodological way, right, which is what lean startup and kind of modern entrepreneurship theory teaches you, you run experiment after experiment after experiment to test out your ideas. And so entrepreneurship then becomes less about, eureka, bolt of lightning over your head, light bulb flashing on and off, but really what it took to invent the light bulb, which is I learned Thomas Edison saying, I learned 999 filaments that don't work in a light bulb, and that's all wisdom and knowledge that accrues to you in figuring out the solution that will work, and the 1000th time you test it out, you figure out, what the material should be for your filament. And that's Thomas Edison, who had, brilliant idea after brilliant idea. So I think that's the key takeaway, and especially as young people, headed off into the real world, I think, become comfortable with failure, give yourself enough time and runway and have enough patience with yourself to allow yourself to fail and really embrace it and take time to reflect and kind of extract as much knowledge as you can from it.
And adding that, learning that resilience to be able to deal with that failure and get up and move again, I think really differentiates the entrepreneurs from others who maybe aspire to be entrepreneurs. Rachel, you're facing a huge issue right now, and I know this is on the top of your mind constantly. I mean, would you mind sharing a little bit with the challenge that you're faced with right now?
Yeah, just to echo though, when I was initially thinking what would I say, just out of the gate, it took us a while to actually get going and to actually sell because we kept waiting for something that was perfect, and we were just not doing anything, and really had to realize not doing anything isn't doing anything. It's not running a business. It's not moving forward on the impact, and releasing yourself from that sense of perfection early on will get things going a lot more quickly than we did. That yes, there is constant failure and constant attempts, and we're in as Matt alluded to, we're in a really challenging situation right now because so much of our efforts over the past years, a lot of my time personally on the ground, a lot of our team, a lot of our money has been really focused in Sierra Leone, and now, as perhaps some of you have heard, there's the Ebola crisis. And now we're at a point where there's these two different sides, because as we look more broadly and try to find a good option for us moving forward, we're realizing that it'll be very challenging for us to continue in the same way, and yet it also shines a light on how important the work we were doing has been. That there isn't another project like ours out there, and yet there's an incredible demand for it. And so now we're at this interesting challenge where we need to find a way to best leverage this knowledge, to best leverage this organization that we've built in a way that can continue on, so that the learnings can be used across the industry, and yet we're faced with a situation where the fundamental materials of our product are no longer available to us. So it begs questions about the structure of our company. Can we continue on with the structure of our company? It begs questions about our team. Do we have the skills then to, once Sierra Leone is in a different place, the diamond industry, the market on the ground is going to be entirely different. Do we have the skills to address that if we do make it through? So lots of different challenges, and I think a really big learning there is there are so many things that are out of your control, and that yes, there's a great need to be resilient and to face failure directly, and then it will again and again challenge you to have to make the decision of, do I keep going, or do I have to reimagine what I'm doing? And that is a constant challenge.
I would add to that to say that I think it's an important example of that many social entrepreneurs face, which is you're not operating in isolation, you're part of an ecosystem. There are other players, there are other contextual factors and forces at work, and not forgetting that fact. And so here's you've been hit head on with one of the most incredible, tragic, human global health crises of the last decade, and it's directly affecting your business. I think it'd be best to open up to folks from the audience to open up this conversation. The way we're going to do this, it'd be helpful if you raise your hand. Catherine Black, my colleague from IE, is back there with the microphone. Since we're recording this, we would like to get your question recorded. So let's just open it up to the audience for questions for our three panelists. Who'd like to start? Over here, Catherine. Just give Catherine one moment while she comes to you with the microphone. And we'll do our best to keep our responses brief so that we can get through as many as possible.
Hi, I'm Maxime. I'm an exchange student at Stanford here, but I worked at Impact Hub this summer on impact measurement, and I looked a lot into impact investment. So one of the topics that I'm really curious about for startup, like for entrepreneurs, like how do you get your startup capital? Since Donnell mentioned that you approach a lot of impact investors, I wonder what actually get them to invest in your project, but not all the other projects, because there's so many impactful projects out there right now. So why do you think your project stand out for these investors? And maybe for Rachel and Daniel as well, I don't know how you secure your startup funding. Maybe you could share on that.
Accessing capital. How to stand out.
Would you guys
Great question.
Yeah, would you
Yeah.
guys like to go ahead first?
Sure. Great question. I'll tell you quickly about our revenue streams, and more importantly, why would people want to support Student U? About 40% of our funding comes from the government. So we have a large federal grant and then some local government funds, about 40% from foundations, local, statewide, national, international, and then 20% from individuals. I like to think that people really believe in the why behind Student U, that idea that all kids can succeed. And people hear us talk about these fearless dreams that we have for our students. And I think they're inspired by those fearless dreams. And then they know that we're going to work tirelessly to make those fearless dreams come true. And that combination of having lofty goals and using big language and getting people motivated, plus the really hard work that happens every day, I think connects people to us. So the why plus these big dreams that we have plus this tireless work that we do, I think that attracts people. And the last thing I'll say is that we were built by Durham for Durham, and we're really proud about how much of our money comes from Durham, and I think that's unique to Student U and helps us attract donors.
Thanks, Dan.
I'll go. So for the first few years, we bootstrapped it. It came out of our own pockets of our founders, our partners, and then revenues from the sale of jewelry. We really wanted. Sorry about that. Is this working now? Hello?
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. Is this thing on? No. Sorry. Because we're in this company because we believe in fairness. We started this company because that was something that was missing in this industry. So when we thought about capital as well, we wanted to make sure that were we to go forward with a proposal and an ask to an investor, that likewise that would be fair. It took us a little while to actually feel like we had a fair ask to go forth with a pitch that we could really stand behind and really feel confident selling. We did end up attracting some investors. They were interested in impact, but they weren't particularly picky about what metrics we used. They really believed in the idea. They believed in members of the team. That's really what it came down to. And that investment was used for a specific project that would help us get to the next level. So really for us, it was a delayed investment. We toyed around with actually bringing on a larger investment at that time, but diamond mining, as many of you probably don't know, because raise your hand if you're a diamond miner in here. That's what I thought. Right, you? It's a really, really risky endeavor. And we wanted to de-risk it as much as possible before we put other people's money on the line. So we ended up taking a smaller investment. And some could argue if that was a good decision or a bad decision. But that helped us get to the point that we could do our small mine.
So we raised a round of financing. We're a venture-backed startup. Our money comes from impact investors in New York. We have some investors in Philly that I think are associated with Investor Circle, which has a chapter here. Cool. We spent a lot of time talking to impact investors, maybe 6 to 10 months. talked to folks on both coasts, learned a lot about them and their investment theses. I think Rachel spoke well about the decision process around whether or not you want to take in venture capital or not, because you're selling off a piece of your company. A useful framework that I think for you all to think about if you are thinking about raising capital is the horse, the jockey, and the race. The horse is your idea, right? It's it's a vehicle. The jockey is you and your team, which Rachel just talked about, and the race is your market, right? What product are you selling and how many customers are willing to buy what you're selling. So investors of all kinds, including impact investors, use that kind of framework. What's your idea? What's your product? What's the size of the market? It needs to be huge in order to raise venture capital. And you need to have a strong team that complements your weaknesses and can solve all of the problems that you're going to have bringing a new product to market. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks. Now, let me add two things. If you're a student, you have opportunities here on campus, whether it's competing in the Duke Startup Challenge or other innovation competitions that take place even beyond Duke. For example, the E-Teams coming out of the National Center for Inventors and Innovators Alliance and so forth. And there are some of the schools have innovation funds and innovation prizes. The other thing I'll say a little bit more broadly about impact investing, some folks may not know, but we have here at Duke, through the Center for the Advancement of Social Entrepreneurship, the CASE Impact Investing Initiative, which is one of the leading research initiatives on impact investing in the country. And was Carrie? I was just going to point out a colleague over there at CASE, but it's the casei3.org. So if you want to learn more broadly about impact investing, I encourage you to go to casei3.org, read some of the reports and the work, and come to some of the speakers that are on impact investing. So let's take another question. Catherine, if you can take the microphone to our next, you go ahead and pick someone, Catherine. Come on.
No pressure.
Hi, I'm Ying. I'm a sophomore at Duke, and I'm wondering, what is your biggest regret?
Oh, wow. Biggest regret.
Pass.
I'm going through this beautiful slideshow in my head right now. I wish you could see it. Like each slide is a different regret, and it's just there's this beautiful music going on, a bittersweet symphony is playing, and it's really intense. Great. I'm going to do two really quickly. Okay, number one is that the first day of programming we ever had is 2007, and the Herald Sun, a local newspaper, wanted to do a story on Student U, and I was so excited, just like, this is great, we're going to get publicity, that's so cool. I did no work to prepare the reporter and did no work to support the reporter in writing a story, and the story that came out the next morning, the first sentence said, poor kids who can't read attend Student U. We worked for 2 years to build this culture of empowerment and build this culture around this idea of all of our kids are brilliant. And it took the reporter one line of it was on the front page of the newspaper to try to rip that apart. It's okay. We worked really hard to fix that. We are so careful now about any news story because I think messaging matters so much, especially when you're working with people, human beings. I'll just leave it at that. That was a big regret.
Can I ask you something that gives you joy?
Yeah.
Is there a highlight, something that makes you get up in the morning and do this work, a point of joy in your work? Anybody want to share
Even
that?
a better slideshow now.
I can jump in with
Please.
regret and then
Okay.
add on the joy on top of that. So this is, I wish I had done it differently. That we, early on, there was a small crew of us that decided this is what we wanted to do. We did have skills that complemented one another, and so we said, yeah, let's do it. It was, again, small. We didn't know exactly where we were going with it, but I wish that we had been more deliberate about job descriptions early on and attempting to figure out who else we needed to fill out our team, because it ended up being that a lot of us were kind of trying to do so many things for the first time, when there are people who are out there who are so capable and probably would have been interested in at least talking with us about being involved. And we never took the time to actually articulate the types of skills and people that we would need. And I wish we had done that earlier. A joy. I'll give you one amazing story. Well, actually, probably the most exciting part was after months of trying to mine diamonds, which is a slew. I mean, this was years of research, talking with politicians, chiefs, paramount chiefs, community chiefs, diamond miners, diamond diggers, community members, lots of different people in Sierra Leone, all over. And it went from, we got a geologist, we got 50 acres down to 3 acres. We worked with the community, we got lots of different steps involved in this. And it took us a while, and then we found a diamond. It was the most amazing thing. It happened. It was right there. And it was just this, like, so symbolic of just how all of that work can, on one hand, like, really pay off. On the other hand, like, it can be really small and not that helpful. So that was probably one of the most exciting moments of just, oh my goodness, it worked. It worked. We did that. Probably even more exciting, though, was we had a team of 35 diamond miners, and it was a really big deal to me that we were very particular about health and safety, and I was very deliberate about making people wear boots. And this was kind of a weird thing, and it was maybe not the best idea. I wasn't quite sure if I should introduce this. It was really important to me, though, and it was incredibly rewarding because I found out that people were so proud of these boots that they were actually taking them home, and we were letting them take them home, and we're cleaning them and, like, showing them around town, and we're just so proud of their boots. And they took pictures, and it was this really amazing experience that we were able to, after all of this work and listening to the community and then kind of putting something out there that might be a little risky, find something that actually was pretty beautiful for both of us. Okay. Fun stories? Oh.
Hi, I'm Colin. I'm a first-year Master in Public Policy student here. Thank you all for coming. Up there it is. I wanted to ask a little bit, going off of, Daniel, one of the things you were sharing earlier about scaling, and I wanted to ask each of you, how do you approach that decision? How do you evaluate whether or not it makes sense to scale? And is that something that's totally unique to your situation, or is that something there's broad things about being a social entrepreneur?
I'm also in the School of Public Policy, and I have a similar question, is on scaling, because I come from India, where 390 students and everybody studying. Like, it's really, really hard to convince any investor to come and invest for me. And I just wanted to understand, where do you draw the line between I'm going to focus on quality versus quantity?
Interesting.
Me? Jesus. Okay. Good questions, guys. So I'm a venture-backed company, right? And so our startup would not have raised venture financing unless they thought that we were going for scale. To take a step back further than that, when you're thinking about building a scalable business, there's all different types of businesses. You can build a business that's just for you and your family to own and run in Durham, and just, that's cool. I mean, that's great, right? Thinking about building a scalable venture means that going in, as you think about the solutions that you're developing, the tools that you're building, the infrastructure that you're building in your company are built to scale, right? To replicate themselves, that you are rigorously exploring the needs of customers and your ability to provide a solution for them and to create value for all different sorts of customers. And you know that the same sorts of customers who are demonstrating an appetite for your product in your experiments exist in multiple markets, right? And you want to be able to quantify that number. So I know that for my company, we have a $40 billion market. To have impact in inner cities, we need to raise capital, be in every inner city in the country, and raise capital build tools with our capital to deploy that infrastructure. As you think about quantity and quality, I guess there's you're not really going to get to a real quantity if you don't provide a quality product locally. You just kind of won't make it very far for very long, and other competitors will come along. And so you want to focus on creating value for your customers, and that's quality. And at first, you're going to spend a lot of time hand-holding your customers and providing solutions that are very much focused on them. And you as an entrepreneur are going to be spending a lot of time developing that solution before you offer it to them. But as you hire a team and serve more and more customers, you really want to think about moving away from that custable solution to a scalable solution that can repeat itself without you. And if you do the process well, both quality and quantity will be embedded in your product or your value proposition. That's kind of a airy answer, but all right.
Dan, Rachel, you want to add?
Yeah. So Clarity Project is in a slightly different situation when it comes to that than a lot of other companies, in that there is no question that there is a market. There is no question that people will buy this product. Oftentimes, if you're trying to make a case for your company, it's about, no, there's a market, and yeah, they'll buy it. That was never a question. The big issue in our company was, can we actually supply it? So there are scale.
Source the diamonds.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for that specification. Yeah. Can we actually source the diamonds that will meet the standards that we've set for ourselves? So on an actual scale side, we would love it. Like, yes, every single person that wants a diamond ring that they can wear with confidence, they can get it from the Clarity Project. Absolutely. Yes, every single artisanal diamond miner in the world, even though there's no real number on it, but estimated 250 million. Yes, they're mining in a way that is better for them. It's better for their communities. We didn't need to convince the consumers. We didn't need to convince the people on the ground that the miners in their community, they know that this is an issue more than anything. They want change more than anything. It was really about, can we connect the dots, and can we be a part of a global industry that can connect the dots? So really, our scale has been limited by that.
Dan, do you want to comment at all? You're welcome to.
Sure. Great. So our first class of students, we have 40 students in college all around the country right now, which is pretty thrilling. And because we believe those students have the support now that they're going to need to succeed, we can start thinking more about scaling. We needed to get to that milestone, which took 9 years of really hard work. So I just want to emphasize that. We're spending this year doing what we did when we started when I was 19 in this building, which is we're going to spend a year listening and learning and understanding what Durham thinks we should do next, because we want to be scaling in a way that Durham wants us to scale. So come back in a year and I'll give you an update, and then I'll let you know what we're going to do.
I didn't like my whole answer. I'm going to do another 30 seconds. Okay. There's a Harvard Business School case call about Sks Microfinance. Sks Microfinance raised $2 trillion or something like that on the Indian stock market. It's a microfinance company founded by someone I can consider an advisor and mentor. They raised a ton of venture capital. And Vikram spent 10 years in rural India fighting off loan sharks, educating people, making loans to women, developing a high quality model, and then figuring out how to scale it. And then in scaling it, took in capital from a bunch of for-profit investors, which was a decision that he thought was the right one to make in order to bring low-cost loans to in rural women across India, right? And so that quantity versus quality question is very real. And as for those of you who aren't familiar, his company did go public, but in the process, lots of the loan officers really pressured lots of their customers to repay loans that those women actually couldn't afford. There were reports that some of the women took like the gold filling, which in some parts of India is like a cultural thing that even the poorest of Indian women have, and collected that as payment. And in some cases, there were actually suicides where women left a note saying, "I've taken out a life insurance policy. I'm unable to pay my loan. I'm killing myself so that my policy can repay Sks Microfinance." And there's real challenges here, right? And I think, just because you guys are PPS students, I think that's an interesting case to check out. The other one that's really interesting is Recyclebank. Same thing, they took an investment from some folks in Silicon Valley, and there were issues there. But the question is, do you want to solve problems at scale? And I think it's incumbent on all of us to really think about what's realistic, what's necessary in order to kind of reach the full group of folks that we actually want to serve and help.
I'll add that our colleagues at CASE have been studying scale since about 2002. If you go to scalingsocialimpact.org, a lot of our research is up there. The Social Entrepreneurship Accelerator at Duke is really the kind of culmination of that. But we've been looking at strategies for scale, understanding ecosystems, readiness of the organization, readiness of the innovation. Given our time, though, I'd like to propose that we kind of close up by offering one comment from each panelist. You've got a bunch of students here. We're going to have a reception out there, so we'll hope you stay and mingle with us. But if there's one kind of closing thought that you might share with students who are maybe aspiring to someday, be a social innovator or a social entrepreneur such as yourselves, one key takeaway that you'd like to offer folks as they to ruminate on?
I can go quickly on that. Really, it's a reiteration of what I had said earlier. I firmly believe it, that there's no way that it's going to be perfect out of the gate. Even when you are out of the gate, it's still not going to be perfect. It's just never going to be perfect. So just start. And starting is learning. And get out there and listen. And really release yourself from a sense of ego. And there's an incredible amount that you can learn and do.
I'll add, Rachel, there are students in my class are reading a book called exactly that, Just Start, with some really interesting lessons learned on exactly that. So if you're in my class, or if not, look up Just Start. Dan, thought for you?
Great. So at Student U, we have 6 core values, and one of those values is discover your best self. And we talk to our students, what does it mean for you to discover your best self? Not a best self that society might place on you, not a narrative that someone else might write for you, but how do you discover your best self? I would encourage you not to aspire to be us, but just aspire to be the best version of yourself, and do so patiently. Do so by listening really carefully to the people around you, and do so not only by examining the ecosystem around you, but by examining your heart and yourself and your mind, and making sure you are doing the work you need to do on yourself, so one day you can discover your best self and then help others do the same.
I'd reiterate Daniel's point about listening. I spent 10 years in politics. I was a community organizer, and then I've been launching this company for some time after business school. And in politics and in the startup world, listening to people, listening is a learned skill, and it is the most important, most critical skill. And it's really interesting to see as people teach entrepreneurship. It was interesting for me to see that the number one lesson was to learn how to listen to your customers and what's important to them, and how to deliver a product that is quality for them, that they feel good about paying for. The other thing I'd add is that, the wind is at you guys' back. It's an incredible time to think about how to develop a nonprofit or a for-profit that is focused on helping people or the environment. There's lots of capital. There's lots of individuals and institutions, even Goldman Sachs Urban Investment Group, their wealth management division, and all these folks are trying to focus on how to create impact so that they can offer that to the wealthy clients that they manage. So everybody from the toughest investment banks all the way to foundations are pulling for you guys to succeed. So are we. And it's really hard, but it's really rewarding to get to work on something that means something to a lot of people, hopefully. So thank you.
I really appreciate your inspiring stories and your challenges that you've shared with us as well. I hope you can take some time to join us out there. I think we've got some reception set up. I've heard that's chicken and waffles is among the hors d'oeuvres. But I think I can't imagine a better way to start off Duke Entrepreneurship Week than 3 alumni social entrepreneurs at the forefront of social change. So please join me in thanking them for